Hello everybody and welcome back to the Elijah King YouTube thing. Now I know I'm a little late, but this is going to be the first of hopefully very many. Don't mind the rain sounds if you can actually hear that. It is a little early in the morning, but I figured I did have to get this video done at some point, and with a lot of different stuff going on, this is the best time for me to do this. We have what I think I'm going to call this series Rate and Rank a Wrestler. And today, I will pop up the comment somewhere over here or whatever when I get to the editing process. I'll pop the comment up right there. The first wrestler that we have on this Rate and Rank is going to be Chris Jericho.
I'm smoking broccoli, counting up lettuce, in love with the Glock. I think I got a fetish. Cushion my pocket, this shit hella smelly. Let's season my Glock, get that bitch hot and ready.
Now, in the future, these will be a little shorter because I won't go in too much depth to explain what we're actually rating and ranking with this particular wrestler that we do on each episode. But for the first episode, I'm going to explain a little bit. So there's going to be 4 main topics, and then we have a secret extra 5th one, just kind of, we'll use it when it's seen is fit. So, out of the 4 topics, which, maybe I'll do a little something with the editing, will pop it up on the screen or something, we're going to have, number 1 is going to be your wrestling ability. If you're not a good wrestler, you will lose points. If you have a good wrestling ability, you will gain points. Wrestling ability is going to be kind of all-encompassing of your wrestling in the ring, basically. That comes from your selling, that comes from your storytelling, that comes from your actual offense, how everything looks, your moveset. That's all encompassed in wrestling. So, for example, you could be, who we're talking about today, Chris Jericho, who has a very large variety of different stuff he's been able to do in the ring over the course of his career. So, there's some stuff that we will, kind of glaze over a little bit. We won't completely get into too much detail, but stuff like, him doing some huge moves that maybe he can't do anymore, that's not going to affect him in any bad way on a review scale. We're not going to kind of push it in that direction. This is more for the just the wrestling ability, and once we get into different people in different wrestling styles from different promotions and all that different type of jazz, the wrestling ability is going to come with the caveat that different wrestling promotions and different types of wrestling will all be counted as fair and as the same. Even though some different wrestling styles might not be my personal favorite and might not be your personal favorite, this whole series is to put biases beside ourselves and look at, without bias, who is a good wrestler and who is not. Who is actually the GOATs and who are lower on that list. Now, I do want to say that, yes, while the overall goal of this series is to find that Mount Rushmore, that GOAT status, any wrestler is allowed. You can ask for Doink the Clown. You can ask for anybody. I mean, it could be the most boring wrestler in the world. If you want to torture me with having to go back and look through a bunch of their different stuff, just to have this video come out on them, go for it. No problems at all with it. We're just here to take a look at tons and tons of different wrestlers, and maybe some wrestlers that you feel are underrated. You can ask for your underrated picks, and maybe we might feel the same after going back through and doing all of the different stuff that I like to do with these things. Maybe you can even suggest specific matches that you want me to look back on if maybe you feel like they were kind of done a little dirty, but they had very good matches in between. That's all going to be encompassed in their wrestling. Now, number 2 is going to be really your appearance. Now, appearance is one of those things where it is a little difficult to gauge because it's going to be based off the wrestler. Your appearance is your gimmick and how your gimmick fits into the way you look, the way you dress, the way you act, all of that different stuff. It's all about how you're perceived. So different people will have different goals and stuff set in mind for them, such as the same way that I'm going to be looking at Chris Jericho today and pushing his appearance up against what he's actually doing and everything that's going on is not the same way that I would be doing for a Big Show, a Mark Henry, an Undertaker, a bigger guy, because it doesn't really work that way, because the things that the Big Show is doing with his gimmick and the way he looks are good for what he's doing, whereas the stuff on the other coin for Chris Jericho and the stuff he's doing is good for what he's doing. It's all just about how your look, how your gear, how all of that ties into your gimmick, and does it really push forward your character in any way, shape, or form. And that's really what we're going to be rating appearance on. Number three is going to be your promo skills. Now, often in wrestling today, we're kind of more to a point where your promo skills signify a little bit more than your actual wrestling ability, as we've seen with some people nowadays, where you don't really need to be the best in the ring. You don't really need to be even above average in the ring to get big pushes and to get big things to happen to you. You just have to be very, very good on the mic. Now, this is all about mic. So your promo skills is just all about your overall mic skills. And of course, we're going to be looking through a lot of different stuff. And I've already looked through a lot of different stuff. I will say that this series is going to come with the kind of the caveat that you already kind of know this person. So with Chris Jericho, it's going to come with the ideas that you already know who Chris Jericho is. Of course, I will put in a couple clips or a couple pictures just in case to prove a point. But there are people out there who are very big into copywriting if you do have a little too much of a video playing or too long of a clip. So I do have to be very careful with the way that I do that. So this series is going to come with the idea that you do kind of know who we're talking about a little bit. And of course, I will give you an idea of who that actually is. So number 4 is going to be your longevity. Now, longevity comes with a couple of caveats. A lot of this stuff does, but in order to make this the least biased I can possibly make it, we do have to be fair, and in fairness to some wrestlers who didn't really lose longevity due to something of their own volition or their own choice. There are people in this series who we may or may not cover, such as Draws, who, if you do not know about Draws, he got very badly injured after a powerbomb spot and has subsequently been in a wheelchair and for the rest of his life. Very, very sad story, and it's terrible, and stuff like that happens way too often in wrestling, and it's very, very sad. But in a case like that, longevity is not going to be held against him. In other cases that we'll probably look at throughout this series, on more so the Stone Cold. He broke his neck. Longevity is not going to be held against him as far as anything that he did wrong. Longevity is more just for, how long did you keep going and keep fighting it. Now, of course, longevity does take a dip for people like Draws and Steve Austin, but it won't as badly affect the wrestler. The way that I have the list set up is kind of where, promo is up, appearance, or it's promo, wrestling, appearance, longevity, because your overall longevity, I don't feel personally matters as much. Longevity does matter, but when you're putting it up for greatest of all time, I feel like if you only spent 5 years, or if you spent 50, you could spend 50 years in wrestling and still suck. Whereas you could spend 5 years in wrestling, be the best of all time, and just never go anywhere, and just give up or quit or get injured. Any of those three could happen. So longevity does still matter, and it does still count, and it will hurt your final grade. But in the purposes of this video, longevity is the least likely to really bring down your grade, whereas something like if you're a bad wrestler or you have terrible promo skills will really bring down your overall grade. Now the final one, and like I said before, this one's kind of gonna be a little out of nowhere. It's the it factor. Now, the reason why this is not one of the main four, and this is not even going to be talked about in every episode, is because the it factor is something you can't describe the it factor. It's not something that I can look at a wrestler and say, oh, he has the it factor because of this, and this. The it factor is just something you either have or you don't. And there's not really a way to tell whether you have it or you don't. You just kind of have to know. You just kind of see it, and you're like, they have it. And, so as far as that one, it's not going to bring down your grade if you don't have it. And it's not really going to boost up your grade if you do have it. In more of a tiers list style, the only thing the it factor would do is that if you're kind of on that line with somebody and they don't have it and you do, you'll go ahead of them on the tier list just as a point because you do have it. But it's really going to be just for kind of those tie-breaking guys that we really can't come up with it, and in the event that these two people both have the it factor, it'll kind of come up to just a who do we feel like, and maybe I'll ask you guys what you guys think and who you guys think actually is the better wrestler, and then we might be moving them forward instead, or we'll figure something out when we get to that bridge. But I really do want to make this the least biased that I possibly can, and that's why I've gone through kind of these four different categories, and then even adding on this fifth one, so that I have to break it down piece by piece, and therefore I can't just look at the rest overall and say, oh, they're good or they're bad. That way it's constantly giving us new perspectives on these wrestlers and the work that they did do. Now, occasionally I might throw in a wrestler of my own choice just to kind of spread up the list, because sometimes the wrestling list will just end up being all of the super, super top guys, And there's nothing wrong with that, but I do want to throw in a couple people that maybe are underrated or above rated, or not above rated, overrated, or just mid-card guys that, you know, it'd be fun to take a look at back at their career and really, for that time, just say, were they really worth it? Were they really where they needed to be in wrestling? And because there's a lot of people who obviously feel like they deserved a lot more, or they do deserve a lot more currently in wrestling than what they're getting. And maybe it'll be fun to go look at some of their stuff and see, well, do they deserve that? Are they really where they say they are? I feel like that's a fun conversation to have. Now, in the event when we are picking these next people, which I will talk about this again at the end of the video, it does not matter male or female or anything in between. If you want to pick any wrestler, you pick them. They can be from WWE, they can be from TNA, they can be from AEW, they can be from ROH, they can be from New Japan, they can be from NWA, they can be from anywhere. And I mean anywhere. I mean, hell, if you want to put somebody from BRW on this list, you can. It can be from any promotion of any kind and any nature. Because I want to take all these different companies, I don't want to put them together into one list to figure out who of all of these people is the best of all time. And that may change. Maybe by this first episode, Chris Jericho's up there. And then maybe, 20 episodes later, he's not on there anymore. It's all about trying to figure out just who has it. And then those top 4, that's their Mount Rushmore. And that top 1, that's our GOAT. So that's kind of the whole point of the series. I'm very excited to do this right now. And the way that we're going to work around this, hopefully with the tier list, should be kind of fun, just to kind of get a lot of input and see how you guys feel about this whole process. All right. And with that being said, it was a very long intro. In the future, these intros will be a lot shorter because there's a lot of different stuff that we had to discuss before heading into this actual rate and rank. All right, everybody, let's get excited. Rate and rank Chris Jericho. Okay, so let's start ourselves off with Chris Jericho's longevity. This is one of the easiest things that we can do for Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho has been in the wrestling business for decades. He was killer in the 90s, in the early 2000s, in the 2010s, and even still today, Chris Jericho is still putting on matches. It is one of those things which is very, very shocking when you see it, when you've grown up and you're like, wow, I grew up with this guy and he's still doing it. So as far as a longevity scale, Chris Jericho is at the top of the game right now. He is a 10. He's been doing it for multiple decades. He's still doing it currently at the time of making this video. I mean, there's no other way to do this list other than to put him at a 10 for longevity. It's just how it is. Now, let's start on the ones that might have a little bit of some Now, let's start with his appearance. Now, Chris Jericho, throughout his career, has been known to change up his look a lot. If you know Chris Jericho, when he first came in to ECW, he wasn't even called Chris Jericho, I believe. Though I might be wrong about that. I don't believe he was actually called Chris Jericho yet. Throughout his early career with WCW, ECW, and early WWE, he had the super long hair. And then I want to say it was around 2000, right around about the turn into the 2010s, around 2007, I want to say, Chris Jericho completely shocked everybody, cut all that long hair off, and, obviously I'll show pictures, and he went to the kind of like that haircut, that iconic haircut he had in the 2010s, and he carried that thing for a while. As to now, Chris Jericho has, back that long hair again, and he's doing his stuff with AEW, and he's been through a lot. He's gone through a lot in his career. He's gone through many different changes, many different things. Now, talking about his appearance is one of those tougher subjects for a guy like Chris Jericho who changes a lot. I don't think, as far as wrestling gear, he's ever been on the lower side of anything. He's always had pretty nice gear, in my opinion. And I feel like, as a generality, he's always had pretty decent gear. He comes out with the Break the Walls Down. That song was insanely good. Yeah, basically all of the versions of that song that they've used throughout the years with him in WWE. And even to his stuff that he's got now with Fozzy and using that as his theme song currently in AEW. I don't think Chris Jericho has ever really had a bad look as far as anything else. Now, of course, there are some things, and we will continue to talk about this a little bit deeper in the series. Chris Jericho is a little bigger now. He did recently go through a bit of a transformation, getting back into shape a little bit, but for a while he was a little bit bigger, and that's the kind of stuff that is not going to be held against you. He's very, I don't want to say this without sounding rude. He's older. He's an older guy. And when you get older, it tends to be a lot harder to keep up with your weight and all this training and keeping your body in that peak top physical shape that has been seen throughout his career. And even in the 2010s, he definitely put on a little bit more weight around that time. But Chris Jericho has always had a pretty good look to him as far as his gear, his entrance music, the way that he presents himself, even out of ring gear when doing a promo or different work. Chris Jericho, he's a very, very, very strong competitor, and someone that I'm going to argue, and you guys will see the tier list a little bit later into the video, that, it will go from your Mount Rushmores all the way to your jobbers. He's definitely no jobber. Let's put that out of the way right now. And he is definitely no enhancement talent. Let's put that out of the way right now. Those are two things on that list that we're not even going to even consider when talking about Chris Jericho, because his longevity and appearance alone completely take over that. Hello, everybody. Editing EK right here. I don't ever actually say until way later, but, he got an 8 on his appearance. I don't say it in the video. I don't know why. I bring it up later when I'm talking about a whole different thing. but I'm here to say it now so that you guys know he got an 8 on his appearance. Next topic that we're going to get on here with Chris Jericho is going to be his mic performances. Being good on the mic is one of the things that has kept Chris Jericho as one of the top attractions in his entire tenure in WWE. Being able to constantly change and give compelling and good and even funny comedic promos. He's done everything from, like I said, from comedic and funny to mean and villainous. Chris Jericho has been able to put it all on with the utmost seriousness and really making it work, no matter what it was he was given and no matter what storylines he was in. I think Chris Jericho is definitely up there. And as far as talking about, his rating for his kind of mic performances in a way, I think Chris Jericho, it's not just that he has great promos, but it's that he has such a wide range and a wide variety of different types of promos that he can do, and that he can do them so great. And with that being said, I think Chris Jericho is going to end up ranking at about an 8. Now, I say an 8, and I know that's a little bit shocking, maybe coming as a bit of a surprise of him being an 8. While I do think Chris Jericho is a masterful promo artist, there does have room to be desired in his promos, as once he kind of got into a shtick and into a certain thing, it does tend to get a little monotonous, and that it does kind of become the same thing. Especially if you look at his tag work, with Jericho, a lot of that becomes very, very monotonous, and the comedic character for Chris Jericho is very, very good, but it's not Chris Jericho, if that makes sense. In a way, it's almost as if he's having to play another person, because we've seen him do so well in so many other promos and so many other things, that when he gets to these comedic things, they're very funny and they're very enjoyable to watch. You do get a sense of, there was a lot of fun being had, but as far as kind of what was going on for Chris Jericho around that time, and he was having his struggles with the WWE and a lot of things not working out, you can kind of see a little bit of that shine through in some of the work he was doing, as well as a lot of other people who felt kind of the same way around that time with these comedic esque characters. So although I feel like he played every character he had very convincingly, I do think that it did get a little monotonous at times, going through and rewatching and watching a lot of his different stuff, and some of the stuff that he's doing in AEW as far as the promo work is not really, it feels like it's a bit of a step down in my opinion, as an overall from all of Chris Jericho's work throughout his career. I do feel like it's a bit of a step down. So with that being said, I'm going to put him overall as an 8 on the list, because I also feel like there are many people left to come in this series, and to an extent, I know that, well, you know what? No. Let me do this. I will put Chris Jericho at a 9, because I was just trying to think about it. I think that there are only a select few people actually above Chris Jericho as far as promo work, and I think there's a lot of people that are a lot worse than Chris Jericho at promo work. So I'm actually going to change that rating, put that onto a 9 out of 10. So currently, Chris Jericho is rocking with a 10 out of 10 in longevity. He is currently rocking with an 8 out of 10 in his appearance, and he's currently rocking with a 9 out of 10 out of promo work. Now, final thing that we are going to run in here today is we are going to be talking about in-ring work. Now, some people are going to get a little annoyed with me right here. I think Chris Jericho is great. I think if there's one part of Chris Jericho that's worse than everything else, I think it might have to be the in-ring stuff. I think that he has very good in-ring work, but when you compare his in-ring work to his promo skills, and when you compare his promo skills to his in-ring work, one is definitely lacking over the other one. And it's not that his in-ring work is necessarily bad. His in-ring work is very, very good. Like I said, there's longevity and there's different stuff. Like I see him in AEW hitting a lion salt, and he hits it very well for his age. But he's also doing a lot of small mistakes, a lot of those stuff that you would start to feel like after so long that it would kind of become almost like a third nature just to do these things. And I do think that part of it does have to do with some of the people that he may be wrestling. But Chris Jericho has been working hard. You can clearly still see it. He's still got, a lot of want, a lot of passion left in him. But I feel like Chris Jericho is not on the same level of in-ring work that he is on now as he was in WWE and ECW and WCW. I think it's been a downhill run. I think if you want some of the craziest work from Chris Jericho, you want to watch his WCW stuff and early WWE stuff. If you want a little bit more slowed down, toned down pace, then you're gonna want to watch his kind of late 2000s, early 2010s work as a heel. He was very, very good at that. And if you want, a little slower down version than that, you'll watch his 2015 stuff and kind of that whole range of work when he's doing that comedy stuff. And then you can watch what he's doing now, and you can kind of see the decline. And again, that does have to do with possibly some of the people he's wrestling, his age, just physical health. Like I said, when you get older and different stuff starts to happen, it does become a lot harder to keep up with your physical health as well as you were before. So it doesn't hit down on him too bad. But I am gonna have to give him an 8 for his in-ring work. I cannot go any higher than that because I feel like with wrestling careers, there's longevity, but then there's also knowing when it's time to say, I've done all I need to. I've had a great career. Cut my losses. And I feel like, and I totally get him not wanting to do that at all and wanting to keep going as long as he physically can. And sometimes that works out, and sometimes that's the best decision. And I think this is the time for Chris Jericho to really show off that's the best decision for him. I just feel like it's not really it's not really what I kind of feel like is working out right now, and based on watching some of these matches back from Chris Jericho, it does seem to be the case as of right now, though obviously he could turn up and he could really show me what for. Now, with that being said, Chris Jericho is looking pretty good. So let's go head on to the tier list and let's actually rank Chris Jericho on our tier list. And let's go get to that. Okay, and with all of that being said, Chris Jericho is none of these bottom four at all. He's definitely not a mid-carder. So he's going to be going up in the top portion here. And I'm going to have to put Chris Jericho as an all-time great. I don't think he hits that Mount Rushmore, but he's definitely right on the cusp of it.
You think I did it pretty good? Let me know that. Remember, put down the next wrestler that you guys want me to rate and rank. I think this could be a very exciting series, and I think Chris Jericho being the first person to go on this list was a very, very good choice. Having him there now puts a very high bar for all the people to come up after to try and set that bar and to fight that bar. Now, of course, we are going to be trying to do as many wrestlers as possible. So I think that it can get very difficult sometimes, and it is a little hard to rate, and I think maybe it did hurt a little that he was the first to be rated, but I feel like I'm happy with where I put him. I think he's definitely an all-time great. Obviously, he's nowhere on the bottom. I think it's more so that I know that there are better wrestlers and better promo guys and better stuff than Chris Jericho is. While I think that Chris Jericho is at the absolute top of all-time greats, we'll see. This series is all about finding out who actually is the GOAT. So make sure to put any wrestler you want in the comments. Like I said, it can be from any promotion and it can be from any skill level. Put them down in the comments and let's see where they end up actually ranking. And with that being said, I'm Elijah King and I'm your king. And with that being said, I'm out.